Well, hello there, and welcome to the Somewhat Daily News Backup for Monday, the 15th of February. My name is Gus, and this is the Somewhat Daily News Backup. We call it that because we come to you somewhat daily every week on Monday and Wednesday to bring you the finest bits of gaming news we find from around the internet, and we do it as a pair. And in this case, I am joined by the lovely Stephanie Bendixson. Hello, Steph.
It's me. Good morning. I'm good.
Good Monday morning to you. How are you feeling this fine Monday morning?
I'm good. I had a great weekend.
Excellent.
Just did wholesome things. I went running with my dog. I saw some friends, and I streamed last night, and that was fun. Now I'm ready to start a new week.
Ticked all the boxes. Good stuff. Well, yes, we are here to dive into some news, and so I thought we would do that together. We don't have Nick; he's away. Pete's pressing buttons, so I thought we can just do it together. We haven't done this in a while either, so I thought,
No, we're a good team, though. I think
we worked well last time together. Although my segues were a little off-brand, so I'll steer clear of those.
I don't segue. So I think any attempt at a segue is good in my book.
Well, speaking of things that are good in your book, someone who's good in our books is, of course, our Patreon sponsor. Thank you. It is Tim. Tim from the Learn Programming Academy helps us make the Somewhat Daily News Backup, and you can help him out by heading across to lpa.dev/backpocket and check out the wonderful work he does as a guider and mentor of those who want to learn programming. You can head over there and get a full PDF document which explains what his mission and goal is as an instructor, which I had to read through, and it's a really delightful little read. I suggest you do so. And he has a whole bunch of YouTube videos you can check up and get to know Tim. I feel like we know Tim now just through this experience.
And we are richer for it, Gus.
We are, very much so, and you can become richer in the language of coding if you choose to follow that up. So worth having a look in there. But he helps us make the Somewhat Daily News, and so let's dive into that, shall we, Steph?
Let's do it.
Excellent. Well, we'll kick things off with the first story for this week, which is kind of a follow-up to a story from last week, which is that CD Projekt Red, the people who hacked it, have started to leak some of the information. So things are getting worse for a studio who have had a pretty rough run as things go for 2021, haven't they?
Absolutely. I can't imagine a more vulnerable studio to do this to, because they have so much that's potentially lurking within the depths of their source code and kind of private files and information. And the fact that they're kind of being held to ransom after such a colossal scandal with the release of Cyberpunk 2077 being, I guess, a cluster. What is our a swearing thing on this channel? Can we say?
Oh, we can swear, but I like to say clusterfuck sometimes, just because I think it's
okay.
Sounds a bit softer.
Clusterfuck. That sounds like a tongue twister.
It does.
But yeah, I feel really bad for them. I feel like they're kind of in the business of damage control at the moment, and this is just not the right time for them to be having to deal with this.
Totally. So for full context, this was reported late last week that hackers infiltrated CD Projekt Red's network and got in there and started pulling out a lot of the source code for their games, being things like Cyberpunk, Witcher, and some other titles, and basically wrote a ransom note, which they posted to them saying, we are now going to start leaking this source code if you don't meet our demands, which I believe the demands were basically monetary. It was like a classic hostage situation. And in response, the studio went public and said that they would not be basically giving into these demands, that they were not going to negotiate, that they were going to stick to their guns, which is an admirable stance to have in the face of such sort of terrible behavior, I would think. However, this is them... Oh, sorry, yes?
I feel like hackers either fall into two categories. They're either the kind of social justice hackers who, want to leak information for the greater good to make sure that people are informed. And then there's the hackers who write things like, your public image will go down the shitter even more, and people will see how your shitty company functions.
Stephanie, we don't swear on this show. We just said this.
It's just the lamest ransom note ever.
It is.
It reminds me of a time when my primary school was robbed once. They just kind of, people broke in and destroyed a bunch of stuff and took a TV. And when the police came, they were kind of looking around, and it was like, who would rob a primary school? And then they opened the teacher's drawer and they were like, is anything missing? She's like, oh, my jar of jelly beans is missing. missing. And they were like, right, so it's kids.
Oh, come on. That's shocking.
Because like a real criminal wouldn't take the jelly beans.
Wouldn't take the jelly beans. Well, in this case, it did seem to be a bit more sinister because, as I mentioned, the original ransom note was basically saying, we're after money, we're after more than just, we're not just leaking it because we feel that people were hard done by the release of Cyberpunk. Because, of course, there was a lot of disgruntled gamers and the public out there who you could pitch this towards, saying these are the people who are now hacking CD Projekt Red. But I think, coming out with a very aggressive and demanding ransom means that this is maybe that kicked it off, but these are some pretty sinister characters. And then what has happened more recently is that they've started leaking that source code, the first being for the card game Gwent. So starting small, and then I think building their way up to maybe releasing more important source code for games like The Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk, if these demands aren't met. So do you think they're doing the right thing, Steph, by not responding to their demands?
I think so. In this situation, it's always a question of like, do you negotiate with terrorists and therefore making it a possibility for other people to be able to hold someone in a blackmail position to get money? And look, I don't know. I feel like the worst thing that can happen is that they use the source code information to create like a similar game with similar features, in the case of Gwent. I suppose if they really do, we don't know for a fact that they have source code stuff for CDP, Cyberpunk, sorry. I would be more concerned with like stuff maybe that they had thought about putting in the game and then decided not to. Like maybe it's just dildos. Maybe it's just piles and piles of dildos.
They put enough in the game. I don't think they were holding any back at this stage, but you could be right. There could be something hiding in the source code, which I don't want to say is incriminating, but warts and all, it might come out in the wash. And
like someone's bad judgment call that they were just like, let's just leave this out. Like we want to push the envelope with this game, but maybe not that far.
Yeah.
And if that gets out, then they'll still cop flack for it, even if it didn't make it into the game itself.
Totally, because it's a funny question to ask. What is the damage of releasing source code? And we were talking about it in the sense that it's people's hard work first and foremost. So if that work is then compromised or exploited or maybe duplicated in some way or another, it's like that is literal hours that a studio has poured into getting their game up and running. Which if anyone takes from, it's like it undercuts the work they put in there. But at the same time, it's a hard thing to then track down later on. If someone did maybe dabble and pinch a little piece of code here and there, I wonder if it's something that could be traced back. I'm sure someone like Tim from the Learn Programming Academy would be able to sleuth his way through some code and tell if someone had stolen it from another game. But I think for the layman, for the person playing games...
Smooth, Gus.
Thank you. Another segue in there, but they wouldn't quite know. And as you mentioned, the other really big concern could be that there are errors or judgment calls made in that code. I think famously things like the Rockstar's hot coffee mod in GTA San Andreas, which they never planned to release, but it's still hiding in there, and they copped appropriately, they copped flack for that, as they should have, because it was still in their source code. So, it would be a gut-wrenching feeling for that studio, thinking that's all possibly out there to be looked at and finally combed through. So, yeah.
I wonder, I understand that people have some ill will towards CDP for everything that happened with Cyberpunk, but surely this is not something that people would be celebrating. I feel like it's just... As gamers, we don't want to be associated with stuff like that, surely.
I agree. I think there is definitely a fringe who want to see, because you do often see sort of remakes and mods made on the sort of like the dark web, or not the dark web, but when people take that source code and improve it. And I think there's a lot of very butthurt gamers out there who are like, oh, maybe, we could take all that source code and fix the game. But I think that is not the right direction to go in, especially if it really hurts the studio as well, and probably the bottom line. So I'm sure there are some people out there who are just passionate fans who think this is a good thing. I would disagree entirely, but hopefully it doesn't continue, and hopefully that source code stays where it is meant to be, which is somewhere private.
Would it be amazing if they people got their hands on the source code for Cyberpunk and then just like created some amazing improvements to the game and it became like a community thing?
I think that's what some people are hoping for, but I think that's up to the developers to do. It's not up to vigilantes out there to take it and fix it in that way, which would end in a better game. But as I said, I think the damage along the way would outweigh that, so that would be a real concern. And in the meantime, why would you want to see all the cracks and problems with Cyberpunk? You could just pick the game up right now and see them all for yourself.
Yeah, it's I still haven't been able to play it properly because I'm waiting for that PS5 release and for it to not crash on my, but I'm still committed to playing it.
Oh, good. No, me too. I found a way that it works pretty well in my setup, but I think I'm still oh, do we need M&Ms? Just checking my reminder on my watch. Yeah, I'm still just going to wait that little bit longer until I know everything is smoothed out, and maybe until after we find out that they're successfully hanging on to their source code and these cyber terrorists have got their comeuppance.
I hope so.
All right. Well, moving on from all things, from bad news, I should say, probably to better news. Well, is it better news? I'll let you be the judge of this, Steph. Variety has reported that Jamie Lee Curtis, the actress from such films as Knives Out. Quick, I'm trying to think of as many Jamie Lee Curtis films as possible.
Oh my God, True Lies, Halloween.
True Lies, a fish called Wanda. The actress has signed on to join the production of the Borderlands film, which is being produced by Lionsgate Films. And she will
Directed by Eli Roth.
This is the big one for me. I want to dive into that in a second. She will reportedly be playing Dr. Patricia Tannis. I'm not as familiar with the Borderlands series, so Steph, you might need to help me out here if you were a big Borderlands fan. But she'll be joining a star-studded lineup. But let's just start with that one first of all. Are you excited for a Borderlands film?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like it's been long enough that there's, enough nostalgia attached to it that people will really, really love to see this franchise brought to screen in a different way. It's kind of got a Mad Maxy vibe to it, so they could kind of take it in that visual direction. Mm-hmm. I think it's a really personality-focused, character-focused game, so it'll be interesting to see what actors do with those interpretations. Cate Blanchett is on board, who I feel like almost everything she does turns to gold. So after seeing her in the Marvel universe, she's kind of proven herself nerd tier quality and not
who is she in the Marvel universe?
She played Hela in Thor Ragnarok.
Of course. Gosh, that's like my favorite Marvel film. She's that transformative that I forgot that was her.
Yeah, with the long dark wig and everything. She was amazing.
That's right.
She's such a presence. And I feel like I'm so curious to see what she will be like in a film like this, because I wouldn't have pegged her for Hela, and I would not have pegged her for a Borderlands film, but I just think it's so cool that she's doing it.
It is interesting. And so, yeah, she'll be joining Cate Blanchett, Kevin Hart, and the most recent announcement as well on top of all of that is that I think you guys someone was talking about this recently, who was going to voice Claptrap.
Claptrap.
And that has been confirmed as Jack Black. So what are your thoughts on that casting decision?
I mean, I love that. I think, again, Jack Black has really endeared himself to the gaming community with his YouTube channel and like weird videos. And he's one of those personalities where he can't help but kind of constantly be riffing and, ad-libbing and stuff like that. So I think he'll bring new life to the character. And I think it's very different from the Claptrap we know from the game in terms of like how we perceive him. So he'll be able to put his own spin on it, which is good. The only one that I feel weird about is Kevin Hart as Roland, because I feel like Kevin Hart is like a comedian first. And Roland is like one of the only sort of straight and square characters in the Borderlands universe. So it's so weird to cast the one kind of like inherently like funny person, aside from Jack Black obviously, as this character that's just like really serious.
Well, look, it might be, as you said, like directed by Eli Roth, so it could be kind of like they're using the Borderlands license, but then maybe telling sort of a retelling of that world, or making some left turns when it comes to casting and maybe some of the direction. Like, first and foremost, I wanted to see how aesthetically they choose to portray this film, because that is the biggest thing for me about Borderlands. I have a very visual sort of opinion on these things, and so I don't know how they're going to recreate what is such a distinct look on film. I hope it is not just costumes and some bright colored lights. Like, I hope they do something interesting with it. I'm talking like maybe like a Scanner Darkly level of like something cool.
Nah, but no way.
You reckon it's just going to be it's just going to be a straight live action?
Yeah. I think it's going to have. I think it's going to have really schlocky kind of action with lots of gore and slow-mo-y type things in it to make it visually feel a bit comic booky, in the vein of like Kick-Ass and those kinds of, or maybe even a Scott Pilgrim-esque kind of treatment to it, where it feels gamey without being cel-shaded.
Sure.
But I think its grittiness will be the key, and also I guess what story they're looking to tell through the film.
Definitely. And I guess if you look back to the first Borderlands as well, that was like a pretty brown game. Like there was all the attitude, don't get me wrong, but that one being set on, is it Pandora? I always want to get it, I mix it up with Avatar, but the planet.
Pandora was Avatar.
Okay, well, whatever they called their big rocky planet that they all ran around looking for the vault in the first one was like particularly made up of deserts and brown kind of areas, a bit more Mad Max.
You could say that, of Mad Max, and I would say that that's a completely visually stunning film because they celebrate and make the most of that landscape.
So hopefully you're right. Like as the Borderlands games have progressed, they've definitely injected a lot more neon, a lot more like crazy personalities. So I think if they're going to tap into what is like the known Borderlands property now, it will be a lot more theatrical, over the top, eccentric, that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, whether or not those casting roles are going to land, like they're going to try and simulate the try and replicate the characters from the game directly, or be a bit more of a like, oh, it's a spiritual successor in film form versus not the game itself one-to-one. I'm interested to see. I will put it out there, not a fan of this being made in the first place. I'm a bit of a grumpy old man.
You're always that person, though. You're like, it should just stay a game and we should never explore it in any other medium. And I don't know. I feel like while I understand that usually the original is always going to be better, you have opportunities in different mediums to explore different ways of telling stories that I think is totally, if done right, and it's tricky, but if done right, it can be really good and it can just add to the franchise.
That's true. I will say I would have probably preferred the idea of it being a series. I like the idea of a lot of game worlds being turned into series. Like I know we talked about The Last of Us being cast recently as well, and I've got more hope in that, the fact that they can tell those stories over a longer period of time and actually stretch that out a little bit. So I wonder if condensing this into a film is the right choice. Happy to be proven wrong though at the same time. So
I feel like the issue with The Last of Us is that there's been so many zombie TV shows already that it won't feel different enough. Whereas this is just like, I feel like the direct film comparison is Mad Max, and everyone loved that so much that I feel like this could inhabit its own little world and create something really cool and different.
It's got a lot to work with, and if anything, it's Mad Max with like a rave going on in the background as well. So it's going to be fun to watch regardless. So something to look forward to. Something to not look forward to as we move on from this story is we've gone bad news, good news, kind of bad news again, I guess if you want to do it that way. It's the bad news sandwich, as I call it, is that recently a development has occurred in terms of the PlayStation 5 Controller Drift issue, which you may have read about. And Wesley Yin-Poole from Eurogamer has reported that a US law firm have filed a class action lawsuit against Sony based around this problem to do with the DualSense controller. So essentially what this breaks down to is that the controller has had issues out of the box. Basically, the hardware that's been used to create that controller is similar to the hardware from the DualShock 4, which has a problem that the thumbsticks can wear down to a point of creating drift. Basically, the input says that the character or that the controller is pushing in a direction where no one's touching it. This happens with a lot of other controllers, which we'll get to. But basically, it's gotten to the point now where a law firm, who I'm going to pronounce incorrectly here, called Chimicals, Schwartz, Kreiner, and Donaldson Smith, or better known as CSK and D. Gosh, I'm terrible at that.
I want to say Chemicles. Chemicles is what
Chemicles?
Chemicles?
Possibly. They have put together a class action lawsuit that was kicked off from one plaintiff who put a complaint forward saying that they're claiming this is defective and that Sony haven't done enough to rectify the problem and to make it possible for people to have the controllers replaced, repaired. Basically what they're saying is that currently people are dealing with a whole bunch of pre-recorded phone prompts, being stuck in a whole labyrinth of, trying to find the right person to talk to, which is always a difficult issue when it comes to the tech world. And then a lot of the times they're saying that customers are having to pay for shipping of the controllers and even for the repairs themselves, even while they're in warranty. So this lawsuit is being put forward based on the fact that they're saying this shouldn't be the case. Sony should front the costs here and be able to fix this problem. The issue is that basically when you turn your PlayStation 5 on and you sign into it, you agree to a end user license agreement, which has a clause saying that they can't file class action lawsuits against them. So at the moment, they're basically saying
that seems like almost like a prenuptial agreement in the sense that like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's there, but like doesn't like a certain amount of consumer law protect you from all of that regardless? Like you
You'd
should be
think
able
so,
to
but I
spend
think
money on a project, on a product and
Yeah.
have it function the way it's supposed to and have a certain lifespan of efficacy. And I feel like just because they've put that in their end user license agreement, whatever, doesn't mean, I feel like that doesn't override that basic stuff.
Totally, but apparently this is quite a common thing, and apparently that's the case in Australia. Is that I think you're right. This is more of an American thing, where I'm sure there are always like some pretty sneaky loopholes to get through in the courts.
They love a lawsuit in America, don't they?
Don't they? They just love them, and they like being able to be like, wait a minute, and read something in the bottom print, and you're storming into the courtroom and slam it down and be like, Your Honor, he signed this EULA or whatever, therefore the case is thrown out, dismissed. That kind of thing. Very dramatic. But yeah, in the case of Australia, I think that would be what happens. Currently, what's happening is that the plaintiff has that they have agreed to PlayStation's terms of service upon setting up the PlayStation 5, but they have then written to Sony expressing that the initial plaintiff's intent was to opt out, resolving any disputes with the company through an individual arbitration. So basically saying like, yeah, that's really unfair. We should be able to find a way around that. So currently, the complaint demands that there should be a jury trial, and the plaintiff himself is seeking monetary relief for damages suffered, which I always find is like, again, we're looking into the American court system here. I'm like, come on, just fix your controller and be
I was depressed because I couldn't play games and then I couldn't work, and you need to compensate me for all the work that I missed because I've been stressing over my broken controller.
Just be happy that you could be the hero that maybe led the charge to get everyone's PS5 controllers fixed.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I have not experienced this with my PS5 controller, but then I realized that I just haven't had enough games to play on it to like wear and tear, have any kind of wear and tear on the controller itself, so I wouldn't know. I will say though that my Switch Joy-Con has had issues. When we went into lockdown and we were all playing Animal Crossing, I don't think I had the standard drift where my character was just like literally drifting to the left slightly, but it would occasionally just get locked and my character would just start running in one direction and I couldn't change it, and it would just like, there was nothing I could do to stop it. And then I had to kind of find different ways of rebooting the console to like break out of that thing. It was super annoying.
Well, I think the Joy-Con had quite a few little hiccups right out of the box. And again, it's something that you find a little further down the line as people experience it more and more, and you realize
there's still an ongoing lawsuit, class action lawsuit by I think the same firm.
Correct. Yeah, the same law firm are currently in the midst of that trial, which is basically saying that they're looking for the same level of, I think, sort of confirmation from Nintendo that that's the problem, and leading to a resolve in terms of, I think basically getting repairs sorted. I'm not sure if anyone's hunting down, damages suffered or anything yet. Maybe there are damages from your island in Animal Crossing that you feel like you could have combated if your controller wasn't drifting. So maybe
I think I would argue that my time, but at that time in my life, I wasn't doing a whole lot. That's not my robot in the chat says damages suffered is a legal term that just means pay people back for the money that they spent on the controller and shipping. Right. So it's literally just a cover. It's not like compensation for anything else.
Fair enough. I mean, it just sounds so dramatic, though, when you read it that way.
Yeah. I think legal terms are designed to sound dramatic.
I agree. And they're for me not to understand as well, which is basically my lack of understanding of courtroom drama. I said arbitration before. All I know is that was a character in Halo. So moving on from that. But yeah, we'll see what happens with that. The Arbiter, that's the one.
Oh my God.
I'm kidding. I know what it means. So I think that's ongoing, and we'll see what the result of that is eventually in terms of whether Sony do come around. And I know it's not exactly similar to this, but I find it funny that it's like similar to what happened with the refund policy for Sony and Cyberpunk. It's like they have to make a decision as a front, as a company, and make sure that that's rolled across, globally, and that everyone can deal with that, because obviously you've got regions that are responsible for different, customer bases and that sort of thing. So you want to make sure that Sony come out of this on top doing the right thing, and hopefully this doesn't get bogged down in the legal system for so long that, people are stuck just constantly turning left in Destruction All Stars for another, 6 months.
It again just doesn't seem like it would be a priority for them, since they're just trying to ship the bloody console as fast as they can.
That's
surely.
A good point. Yeah.
I mean, I did hear a rumor that it was something to do with faulty chips that they had to recall, and that's why there were so many. There were so few PS5s, and
interesting.
They're trying to, make new ones as quickly as possible. So, I mean, who knows? It could be a similar situation with the controllers, but surely they have to focus on getting people the consoles first before they start fixing controllers for people.
Totally. And it's one of those scary things that you just have to hope that in 6 months from now, we all rush to get that console, that first one off the production line, and you hope it's not absolutely riddled with bugs that we're then going to have to deal with all sorts of problems. So, hey, if you didn't get a PS5 straight off the line, like, maybe you're the lucky ones. Is that a nice way to put it?
Maybe. Gorgrim says Sony is next on the cyber attack hit list.
Oh, no. Who knows? We could be reporting on that pretty soon as well. We should round things out, though, with one final story regarding another big tech company and maybe the little guy coming up and well, I say the little guy, but basically Alice O'Connor from Rock Paper Shotgun reports that Andrew Spinks, who is the CEO of Relogic, who developed Terraria, however you like to say it. I think it's been years since it came out, and we still struggle.
I believe it's pronounced Terraria.
Okay.
In spite of the way it's spelled.
Well, there you go. They have, or he has chosen to scrap plans to release it on the Stadia after a bit of a feud with Google. Do you want to fill in the blanks here about what's been happening? Like, it's a weird sort of circumstance.
Yeah, well, I think so. As I understand it, Google have ceased all kind of in-house production on for the Stadia. They're just going to buy third-party stuff, like as is with the case with Terraria. But this particular dev was locked out of his Gmail account or his Google account. And so he's just not able to move forward with things. And he kind of just had a bit of a tantrum online, which as someone who had a public Twitter tantrum recently, I totally understand and empathize with. But he's basically just like, well, if you guys aren't going to listen to me or get this fixed, then I'm going to just take my game somewhere else.
It's a funny one, isn't it? Because, yeah, essentially he lost access to his Gmail, which he's had for 15 years, his Gmail address, and his Google Drive, which, I mean, that's what scares me because, I mean, emails are important and maybe they're attachments, but your Google Drive can have, like, if you haven't backed that up somewhere else, if that's your backup, and as a game dev, like, maybe he could have important stuff there. Who knows? It could be leaked
because you have to be actively using it. And if you don't like access that information, then it can get wiped after a period of time. So that's what I imagine he is kind of nervous about.
I'm sure he is. But
I rely on Google Drive for so much stuff.
And in this case, he tweeted out, and his tweet reads, I absolutely have not done anything to violate your terms of service, so I can take this no other way than you deciding to burn this bridge.
Which seems unlikely.
No, I agree. Consider it burned. Hashtag Terraria for Google Stadia is cancelled. My company will no longer support any of your platforms moving forward. Which is a pretty bold way of telling Google that via Twitter and publicly as well. But maybe that's the only way it's going to get fixed.
Yeah, it's interesting what would have triggered this. I had I had a thing happen with, I tried to log into my Airbnb account the other day, and it was just like, your account has been locked. And I was like, oh, maybe that was like, it's because I know sometimes, things get hacked and they lock it just in case. So I was like, I sent in the request. I was like, hi, my account is locked. Was I get hacked? And they're like, no, I think that just happened by mistake. Sorry, I unlocked it now. And I was like, oh, so it could be something that's triggered it for no reason. And I guess they just don't have the back end support to be dealing with cases like this, quickly enough. And so he's just been like, well, fine.
You didn't want to
I'm going to take my game somewhere else.
Well, you didn't want to tweet to Airbnb and be like, I consider this no other way than this bridge is burned. I will not be, I'll be no longer staying at any Airbnbs. Goodbye.
I love Airbnb.
No, fair enough. Well, in this case...
And I love Google Drive too, and I'm surprised that he's not tried... I mean, I don't know how long he's been trying to access his information or what channels he's tried to use to get this sorted. But I guess my fear is that if a developer of a game for a Google platform can't get the necessary help he needs to get his stuff back, then what chance do any of us have?
You're right. It would almost seem more justified if he wrote in publicly or not saying, I don't have faith in your company based on this level of customer support, but it seems a little more vitriolic in the way that he's like, hey, you chose not to help me, you must hate me, therefore I'm going to take this game away.
He's the one that's burning the bridge there, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know why he's saying this is on you, but I mean, the only unfortunate thing at the end of this is that that game doesn't go somewhere else, in this case cloud gaming, which is still struggling to find its feet, even though we don't have Google Stadia in Australia, but I think even in the States, it's a bit of a mixed response. So whether or not this is detrimental to that platform getting more games and becoming more popular. But it is sad anytime that a game doesn't get a chance to go somewhere else, because I always think about like the network of people around that might suffer because of this or might lose out, whether or not. I think Relogic are about 12 people working for other games and stuff. So I really hope he discussed this with them before he just decided to angrily tweet to
I'm
Google.
sure he did. I feel like angry tweets are a last resort, right, for most people. And yeah, again, as I say, I empathize because I did something similar recently with respect to the NBN. But
I like that this story is there based on the fact that we're like, you have a personal connection to this, don't you?
Yeah. Sometimes you just kind of feel like, you know, you've explored every other avenue, and all you can do is just like have a meltdown on a global platform.
Look, it's there to be used that way. I think if all you were doing was abusing, or all you saw was abuse at, you know, bigger companies with the need of getting something in response, then it might be a bit of a problem. But I think you were more than justified in your case. I'm not sure if in this case Andrew Spinks was. So we'll just have to see what Google's response is, if there is any at all. Who knows?
Well, there could be something deeper. There could be a reason why they've locked it all, and we don't even know about it.
I reckon he's got source files in there for CD Projekt Red in his Google Drive. Ooh. So that's what they're clamping down on. See what I did there? Call that one back. Well, there we go. That's the last story we have at the moment, and that's about all the news we wanted to chat about today. So let's back it out.